Hi Jane, thank you for joining me today. So welcome to this vlog. It's the first one we've done in a little while, and I'm here talking to Jane Waters-Davies from University of Wales Trinity St David's about some of the research we've been doing. My name's Jackie Tyree, I'm from Swansea University, and we are both co-Is on the research project Children's Participation in Schools. So Jane, first question. What's this bit of the research, this kind of third phase of the research, and what are you trying to find out from this piece of research?
Okay, thanks, Jackie, and thanks for the welcome and the opportunity. So the third phase of the project has been really exciting. We've been working with our ITE community, our initial teacher education community, to try to explore what needs to happen or what might happen in terms of participatory pedagogies, so that young children, particularly 3 to 7, are able to enact their participative rights in a classroom setting more so than they are already. We know from the other project data that children are not routinely having these opportunities. And so this part of the project is about exploring, well, what needs to change in order that they can have these opportunities, and in order that we are best preparing our new entrants into the profession to be confident and capable in using a wider range, I suppose, of pedagogies that enable young children's participation.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for explaining that so clearly for us. I think really it would be really interesting just to hear, as briefly as you can, explain to us kind of what the design of the kind of research that you did was. How did you collect data, and who did you talk to? You've mentioned initial teacher education students, so if you can just give us like an overview, as brief as you can, about what you did and how you collected the data.
Yeah, I will try and be brief. It's not one of my skills. So what we did is we had two stages, if you like, of data collection. We had one stage where we spoke to initial teacher education students at the end of their programme. So they were undergrad and postgrad primary ITE students. And we spoke to them in June at the end of their programme. And we asked them to what extent they had the opportunity to explore what children's participation was, what children's rights were, how these might be enacted in the classroom, and what participatory pedagogy might look like. And we also spoke to their teacher educators. So that was the teacher educators who had an overview of the entire programme and were working in universities. We had a couple of focus groups with teacher educators as well, because clearly they would know the intention of the programme, and we wanted to know the students' experience and the ITE intention of the programme. So that was the first bit of what we did, and that enabled us to understand that actually there was minimal focus on this aspect of pedagogy within the ITE programme. And that finding, I can talk more about that if you want, but that finding supported what we had found from one of our early pieces of work, the survey data, where we had worked, we'd explored similar issues through a survey with all our ITE providers in Wales. So we knew that what we had to do was somehow, in the second part of our work, stage 2 of our research, what we wanted to do was explore how do we make things change. Clearly, IT is a really busy, crowded space. There's a lot that goes into those programs, and people are generally they're full, they're quite full. So we wanted to work with the community to say, what can we bring from what we've learnt in our second phase, where we worked with, where some of our research team worked with teachers in service in school. If we mobilise that knowledge into our initial teacher education community, what does that enable them to understand about how they might then enact both their own pedagogies, but also pedagogy within initial teacher education? So we're working at 2 levels. We're thinking about how do those new teachers develop participatory pedagogies themselves, but also how does the programme, the ITE programme, ensure that happens over time? So we're trying to work on both those levels. And the stage 2, we had a series of discursive workshops where we basically talked. We had a wonderful time. We had a big group, around 30 people, 27 ITE students, primary students, and then I think it was 5 or 6 teacher educators based in school, and then another 4 or 5 teacher educators based in university. So we had kind of the entire community there, and we tried we had discussions about what's your duty, what do you do already, what does it look like in school, and then we were able to bring in data from our work from the second work package, if we like, the second phase of the project where we worked with schools. We were able to bring data in and say, well, what about this idea? And our teachers were saying that, how does that work? What do you think about that? And what we found was and we talked about it as if they'd put on lenses. So we had our first discursive workshop, and then the teacher educators and the students were then all going into schools. They had their long placement in school. And so when they came back to us for the second workshop, they had so much to say about how they were seeing things differently. And this was school teachers, teacher educators in university, and the students. How they were understanding differently where there may be more opportunities for children to participate, and what the challenges were, what the enablers were, and also the value in doing so, the value for children. We had a lot of comments where they said, actually, we realise how capable these children are when we enable them to be more participatory, when they have more opportunity to make choices, to lead aspects of their learning, for us to be responsive to what they're telling us and to trust them. So I think I'm kind of doing that thing where I burble quite a lot now, but what we found
fine.
was
it's really interesting stuff, isn't it? It's really interesting how you kind of see that kind of change over a period of time, and if I understand the methodology correctly, you did focus groups and then did the discursive workshops a term later or a year later?
It was so we did the focus groups were at the end of one academic year, and over the course of the following academic year we worked over the course of that year, term 1 and term 2. So we had the first workshop in September, and the second 2 were in the spring.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that what you're saying is that actually for the student teachers in particular, I was just kind of picking up on that a little bit, is that they clearly sort of either saw things differently, or is that what you're saying, that they saw things differently, or that even just those questions that had been placed to them earlier had made them start to engage a little bit more with their own reflections and thinking on practice and their experiences in practice, which I think in itself, it's not like they spent a long time, they didn't spend weeks and weeks talking about this. It was a relatively small engagement with this kind of topic, this idea of participation and children's right to be heard. And then clearly that's something that had triggered things for them. Is that something you saw coming through in the data?
Yes, what we saw was so in our third workshop, we were able to continue the conversation. We moved it into what needs to happen in ITE, so that as new teachers, you are prepared to engage in participatory pedagogies and therefore enact the curriculum for Wales, because it is actually a requirement of the curriculum for Wales that is the case. And a lot of what they said was, what's been really useful is the opportunity to be challenged by having, how do I put this? There's like a set answer. When you say, how do children participate in schools? There's an answer that we get, and we'll get that from a lot of individuals. We find that across all our data. And these are to do with formal democratic processes, school council, eco council, representation. And by challenging them and pushing them and offering other ways of seeing classroom pedagogy, and exploring what might it look like if we look for opportunities to extend the experience of participation for our learners, just posing those questions and kind of probing some of those stock responses that we had in our early discussions. It just opened, it was like it opened a door. It really was. I mean, we've done thinking about threshold concepts in the past, and it was like we'd kind of almost brought them to a threshold and said, look, what's the other side of this threshold if you see things differently? And I think core to that seeing things differently was, if you consider the experience that the learner has of participation. And that seemed to be really quite powerful. And we talked about authentic and inauthentic practices in planning, for example, which was data that we'd had from our second phase. We talked about boundaried participation, where children are enabled to have an opportunity to say something just here, maybe on a Friday afternoon or a Monday morning, and we kind of challenged those things. And it was almost as if just posing the question
was
enough, because we had, and I think what's really important is we had the whole ITE community together. So those student teachers were working with teachers who'd also been asked and challenged those questions. And also they were working with teacher educators who in the university who'd also been party to those questions. And so it was the whole community were kind of inquiring, if you like, about this issue together. And so I think that was really valuable as part of the methodology.
Amazing. And I'm a bit aware that we were trying to keep these vlogs quite short and snappy, and yet there is so much interesting stuff to discuss, and I don't want to rush us, but I think it'd be really interesting if you could, Jane, to kind of like summarize some of the things we've been talking about, and maybe see if there's anything additional in terms of the key takeaway messages. So if someone was to take anything from our little chat today, what would it be about the work that you did? So, what 2, 3, 4 things would you say are like, take home messages?
I think one take home message is currently ITE programs across Wales do not focus on the idea of children's participation through pedagogy. I think that will be one finding. In order to address that, there are levers and mechanisms that can be pulled, if you like, to try to address that and to change that issue. That's probably beyond this conversation, but we could talk about that
we could do
another
time. We could do another one.
We could do another one. Absolutely. The value of what we've been thinking about is the value of the collaborative discussion with this as a focus, the collaborative discussion where everybody in the room had different sets of knowledge. So there were teacher educators knowledge, teacher educators from school and university have different sets of knowledge. The ITE students themselves come in with an expectation. Often they're quite idealistic and they're there for a reason. They're there because they want to do the best for children. And so this idea speaks to them. And they were very keen and very enthusiastic about the idea that they could be part of this. So I think there's something about bringing that community together in a shared inquiry that was very powerful. I think another key takeaway is we like you say, we only had effectively 9 hours with these people, but what was important was they weren't given homework, but they were given things to think about and to observe between those sessions, and they had each other as more knowledgeable others, if you like, to bounce off if they chose to. And that professional learning always takes time and space. And I think we should make sure that such time and space for that kind of pedagogic inquiry is fundamental in ITE. ITE, as I said, is a very crowded space. But I think the value of really spending time on pedagogic inquiry and asking that question, what does it mean for young learners to participate, is really fundamental. So that time and space within ITE needs to happen. It doesn't mean adding something in. It just means shifting the focus and shifting the lens to that kind of idea within what's already done largely. Another thing that we're thinking about is whether there is enough understanding of of the pedagogical content knowledge about participation, children's rights, and participatory pedagogies. We feel that's like there's a lack, and
within the initial teacher education
within, I think, within the thinking of curriculum designers and curriculum makers, we have not expected our teaching community to do this before. And so therefore there's a piece of learning to do if we want to genuinely enact a curriculum that is rights-based, that has human rights education as one of its cross-cutting themes, if we want curriculum design to be inclusive of learners' voice in, voice preference indication in that widest term of voice, then we all have to do some learning around that. And that will take time, focus and attention. But I think the rewards are potentially really significant.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jane. I feel like we've got through a wonderful amount of kind of meaty conversations, and I think those take-home messages are really useful to kind of draw a conclusion to a finish. So we're going to call it a day there. Thank you very much for coming in. I know we could probably talk for another hour or two.
For ages and ages. And I hope I've done justice to the work that the team have done. We're still kind of working through a lot of those last findings, but I'm thinking that's kind of where we're going. Is there's something that needs to happen in this space, and there are ways that we can mobilise that.
So on that note, I'm going to say thanks ever so much, Jane, for joining me for this chat today. And I'm going to just signpost to anyone listening that to watch this space, as Jane said, that there is more coming out of the project in terms of academic papers. But more importantly, actually, I'm a bit of a funny academic. I actually think it's really important that we're getting other things out there. So we will be putting out there things that are more brief reads, things like policy briefs or infographics or things like this vlog that are a little bit more accessible. So do keep an eye on the project webpage, and just drop us an email if anyone has any questions. So thank you again, Jane, and thank you for joining us and listening to this, everybody.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Jackie. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye.